Here's a fun new thing that we decided to do. DarfMike and I work together a lot, but we never actually work together, friend, because we're always on like different shifts because we do the same desk hosting gig, or you're on the other side of the world and I just get to talk to you through a screen for all of like, I think it's 30 seconds.
That's pretty much how it goes. Yeah. This one, we're going to be so close to each other, but also still so far, different cities within Sweden. So yeah, gotta find a way to actually have a conversation these days.
For sure. So basically what we've decided to do is a new podcast talk thingy called Challenged, which is basically 2 videos before and after the ESL Challenger events, where we're kind of going to chat a little bit about what you can expect, make some predictions, and then the following week after the event, chat again about how wrong we were with our predictions. It's as straightforward as that, right? And this time it's in Jonkoping, which I never say right. Do you know how to say this correctly?
Yeah, I've been being educated. So the trick is that the K is a sh in Swedish, and so it never sounds like you think it should. So it's Jönköping.
Jönköping. And you are going to be on the ground, on the stage. You have the best job. You get to talk to all the players. It's at Dreamhack Summer. Have you ever been to Dreamhack Summer in Sweden before?
No, I haven't. I'm really excited about that part of things. This is an event that's like historic in the world of Counter-Strike. Jönköping, which is apparently just a tiny little lake town. Someone was telling me it's what they call the Bible Belt of Sweden. So not the usual suspect, but it's a massively historic place for Counter-Strike, right? First major out there, historic moments out there. So I think from that perspective, it's going to be kind of cool. One of those places that you've got to go to like once at least in your Counter-Strike career. So pretty excited to see what that's all about.
I was lucky enough, I got to go. I've been to Dreamhack Summer before, and then I did Dreamhack Winter last year for ESL Challenger. And I think like my favorite part about it is how many of like these iconic Counter-Strike people will pitch up there randomly and just be hanging around the ESL Challenger stage. Get Right was just like randomly standing there drinking a Monster at one point. And I was like, oh my gosh, do you know who you are? And he was like, pretty sure I do. But that's kind of the vibe that you have. So it's also like just one of those events that's absolutely epic.
Yeah, I have a fun get right story for you. So we were in Dallas just this last weekend, and I actually got Chris to attempt to lasso a roping dummy, which is just like a bull head on a plastic frame. There was a former junior rodeo guy, and I had him try and coach Get Right in how to lasso. It did not go exactly well. He did accidentally lasso the bollard next to the dummy, but we call that a win. We call that a success.
I mean, at least he got something, right? I feel like that's more than I probably would have done. So that's impressive. I'm glad you got him to do that. I think what you're also going to love about Dreamhack Summer is that there is this like random, obviously where the LAN is, there's this massive stage, and they have these like hardcore Swedish DJs that are just playing on that stage at all hours. So obviously everyone knows ESL Challenger, the hours are brutal if you work in production. You're going to go for like 12, 13 hours. You're going to have so much fun on the way out when you're trying to walk to your taxi, and you're just going to be like bombarded by a full-on rave happening. So enjoy that. That is actually my favorite part about Dreamhack Summer, is how everyone is just like in hardcore party mode the entire weekend while playing games.
I'm here for it. So basically I should prepare to not sleep at all, is what I'm hearing.
You should prepare to not sleep at all. And then I would also prepare for the chaos of getting back to the airport. I think my favorite travel story from DreamHack was last year for DreamHack Winter. Obviously, it's this tiny airport, and I think it's like an hour and a half away from where you're going to be. And obviously you're flying to the US, I fly to South Africa sometimes. So we're very limited on what flights we can take out of cities. And there was one flight available for me. I had to be at the airport, I think at like 6 a.m. And obviously you work these like mad hours. I had to leave at like 3:30. It was myself and a photographer. And we got in our shuttle to the airport. And next thing, the shuttle goes to a different hotel and says that they have to pick up some players, not Counter-Strike players, some weird mobile game players. So we were kind of surprised because I hadn't been told that there were other players, but whatevs. We get to that hotel and these players have been out partying the night before and have not woken up. So that was fun. We waited for a good 10, 15 minutes. I'm starting to get a little bit stressed at this point. The players finally come down with their manager. They put all their bags in the shuttle. And then there's like this weird confusion because there's more players than there is space in the shuttle. A bunch of them stay behind. They get in the shuttle. We're 10 minutes on the road, and next thing, one of them gets a call, and it's the manager who's left his bag in the shuttle that he's not on. So he's screaming in Portuguese about how the shuttle has to come back. These players start screaming at the driver. The driver takes the phone, and the manager's screaming. The driver turns around. At this point, the photographer and I in the vehicle are freaking out because we've now realized that we are definitely going to miss our flights. Absolute panic. But long story short, we work with an amazing talent manager. I don't know why she was up at 3:30 in the morning, but she was. I messaged her. She said, "Don't worry, I will sort this out." I don't know what was said, but some very strong words must have happened, because the driver suddenly turned around and just refused to speak to these players all the way to the airport. And there were some words, I don't understand what they were saying to me, but the word puta was used. So we all know that means bitch. And that was my experience with mobile games, competitive mobile gaming players, and I'm done. I never want to deal with them again. But we got to the airport on time. Right. Yeah.
That sounds about right. We are very great. Very fortunate to have the player managers that we do in the CS space. It's like, you need something to happen, it happens. But that sounds like an absolute nightmare travel day. Did you make your flight?
And we made our flights, myself and Adam, the photographer, and shout out to Betty for doing the magic at 3:30 in the morning. But let's talk now about what we're actually supposed to be talking about, which is
Let's do it.
Challenger. ESL Challenger. This one is kind of a cracker because there's some big names in the mix here. I'm kind of stoked about what we get to see.
I think we're seeing the new world order a little bit. I think part of what's motivating this is that there are teams that obviously have not had the seasons that they were hoping for and are kind of looking for that one competitive spark to be like, oh, we can win Counter-Strike games. And so they're thinking that maybe, taking a step down. I'm thinking, of course, about like Falcons here. Maybe taking a step down in competition will actually help them take a step up in terms of not looking like shit on the server. But it's also an interesting change, I think, in the Counter-Strike world where we're seeing what's happening with Valve going into this next season. They're getting rid of open qualifiers. Valve is going to depend on these Valve rankings that are very wackadoodle at times. And the talk is that going into next year, we might even be getting rid of the RMRs, which, just going to go ahead and throw my thing out there. That's a terrible idea. Bring back open quals. Why are we doing this? This is a terrible idea. But if we are going to do it, everybody's going to have to play a whole shit ton of CS because the Valve rankings are heavily predicated on prize pool and how much you're competing and how many teams you're beating at events. And that means that big dogs like Falcons and Complexity are going to need to play a whole lot of events to make sure they maintain their spots in the rankings.
For sure. And someone like Falcons, this was always what I found quite interesting about all these players making a move to Falcons was they knew when they committed to this team that it wasn't a partner team. So they were well aware that this year they were going to have to grind event after event after event. Unfortunately, they haven't grinded much because they keep getting knocked out really early on. So this has to be, for them, they've got to be looking at Challenger being like this particular Challenger just before the player break. Like, they've got to do something in this particular event. I think their time is run out. They have to deliver.
Yeah, you'd imagine. Certainly if they palm out in this event, like, they've got to take a long, hard look in the mirror. This is the optimistic version of this is like the VP playbook, where VP would love to come to these Challenger events. I'm honestly surprised they're not at this one, and just sort of dominate some lower competition and use that kind of to build up towards upper events. We saw them, running the Challenger circuit for much of last year and the year prior, of consistently either making the finals or taking the crown, and then using that to build momentum headed into big events. I think that was a big piece of that playbook. It's something Complexity has picked up on. I think that's probably the philosophy for Falcons. Obviously, this isn't going to be the same thing because they're headed straight to the player break afterwards. But the idea would be, end a season of massive disappointment with like a little bit of sweetness here, take that out into Cologne, into whatever you're doing next season. But yeah, if you're Falcons, again, this is you talked about it. These are long days. These are brutal hours. These are an event where if you don't have a good start, you might not make it to day two. And if they don't make it to day two, at ESL Challenger Jönköping, like, what are we doing? I know every interview is Snappy saying this isn't a super team. This isn't a super team. Well, why are you guys getting paid like one if you're not a super team?
You've said everything that I'd want to say. I will say the only reason I think Virtus Pro isn't here is because they qualified for the Blast Spring final, so they're in London. But I guarantee you, if James could... Sense. Yeah, if James could double up his team, he would probably be a Challenger anyway. I worry about Falcons. I just think that they have to do something. And like you said, Snappy can say they're not a super team, but this is an event that they have to be in the finals, and they know what to expect because ENCE did ESL Challenger Cato last year straight off the back of Dallas. I think they finished second. So he's Snappy and the core of that team is well aware of the long hours and the brutal training that they have to be prepared for. Interestingly enough, though, a team that does a lot of challenges and never seems to do well is Complexity. I don't think they cope very well with those long days because it is one of those things where they don't get to play their one best of three. I think sometimes if you make it to the finals, some of you will play a semi and a final. Like it's a pretty crap time if you're used to being treated like kings.
I think I haven't figured out what the deal is with Complexity. I say this, this is obviously my bias, wearing my heart on my sleeve. I watch a lot of Complexity. I really like these guys. We both have this mentality because you've got the South Africans and I've got the Americans, where we really want this team to work. We've really wanted this team to work for a while, and they've given us just enough to get the hope up, and then then they have a shitter performance. They have their Dreamhack Atlanta, their Challenger Atlanta, where they just come out and get whomped by the Mongols twice, right? Like, this team is just so all over the map that it feels like you don't really know what Complexity you're going to be getting until the event starts. IEM Dallas was such a massive disappointment, losing to a dead Liquid team and then getting knocked out so quickly from their home event, from the event that would have mattered most if they could have made the stage in front of the NA crowd. I mean, you saw what happened with G-Stu, and they can't even get past the groups or even look like they could threaten to get past the groups. I don't know. This is a team that's just in such disarray at times. They looked good at Pro League. They look bad here. They look good here. They look like it's a ping pong. So if that's the case, I know I've talked to Messioso and he has a theory that they ping pong between bad and good events. They should be good at this one because they were shit in Dallas. So they should be good. Although actually, now that I'm saying that, I think they're playing Yala Compass this week because they just don't stop, can't stop, won't stop. So maybe they'll be good in Yala and then terrible again in Jönköping. Maybe that's what we're going to see.
Do you think it doesn't help that there's like all sorts of question marks around Hallzerk at the moment? Because I feel like Complexity is also a team that plays on emotions. So if there's one, I don't know if I'm correct in this, but from my experience, if like there's some sort of internal whatever, like someone has the flu or someone's feeling down, that whole team falls apart. I'm curious if there's question marks around Hallzerk, there's like a little bit of a weird vibe in the team, and then that's it. Like Complexity doesn't stand a chance.
I think he's been resigned. I'm pretty sure he's been resigned. I haven't actually been told that. Just to be clear, I'm just reading the tea leaves of, Messioso answering a question from a fan that was like, "We've decided what to do here. Announcement coming soon." And it's like, you would not say that shit if it was, "Yeah, bro's cut."
Fair enough.
So I really do think he's going to be with them again. I'm kind of... I don't know how I feel about that decision, frankly. Not even so much a critique of Hallzerk, just a critique of how this overall team has been going, where it feels like this collection of 5 players have had massive struggles with consistency and mentality. And, while Hallzerk flashes brilliantly sometimes, he also goes completely missing at other times. And, yeah, you could say that about a lot of players on this roster, right? Like, it's not a Hallzerk issue specifically, but it is one of those things where you do wonder if... having seen these moments, these flashes, is that really enough to keep this 5 together? And so, assuming that they've extended him for probably another 2 years, I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm wild about the decision. And again, I don't even know how much of that is about Hallzerk specifically and how much of that is just about, like, surely something needs to change if you want to be a consistent contender here.
I agree with you. And I think if you take a look, for me, the 2 big dogs, if you like, coming into Challenger are Complexity and Falcons, but both the dogs are like hobbling. It's like that they have like a thorn in their paws, right? In Falcons' case, I feel like they're running on 2 legs, trying desperately to keep moving. So that makes it really exciting for all the smaller teams, because there are these lesser known teams that come into Challenger who are using Challenger desperately to get that Pro League spot, desperate to try and just prove that they kind of need more opportunities to play. For them, beating one of these teams is kind of the goal coming into this. We'll start with I'm presuming the ones that you're going to be backing, the Podi Astronauts, because I've never met a North American broadcast talent that isn't absolutely in love with Podi Astronauts. Why is that, Mike?
I should have worn my PA merch. Messed up here.
There you go.
Why are we in love with the Party Astronauts? Party Astronauts represent like the ideal of what could happen, right? These are 5 guys, unsigned team. They have pretty much operated as an unsigned team almost always, outside of very short stints. They had they were part of the EG Blueprint project, where they were the team that kind of got most screwed over in terms of opportunities and ability to move up to the main roster. So they were kind of still the black sheep in that situation. They've had like brief stints with there was High Coast, who I don't think even paid them at the end of the day. There's New England Whalers, who they were on. These guys have just always been out there, and somehow they keep going. They keep it going. They've had these little mini merch drops to fund boot camps. They've struggled and earned prize money to just stay afloat and survive. So it's hard not to root for them, right? And you've got a player like Ben Leet, who's been around for a long time, who's impressed as an IGL, but has never quite gotten that top-end opportunity. You've got a Wolfie, who's half Swedish, so he's going to have the hometown crowd. Sixy is this talent that's always been held back by things that are outside of the server, and it seems like he's finally matured and settled in a little bit, which is very exciting, because it's kind of like he was like the mega talent that never was. And now I don't think we're not looking at him to be that mega mechanical star anymore, though he's still got it a little bit, but there's still promise there. They got Fang under the fold now. I do also want to take just a quick second to say, Ponalone just announced his retirement, so classic Party Astronauts player right there, stepping out of the server. He was a big part of why people fell in love with this team. But I'm also going to be realistic with you, Sam. I would be very surprised if they did much of anything at all at this event. I'm just gonna be honest about that. It'd be really nice. I would love it, but I think if they take a win, that'd be dope.
It is a best, it starts with a best of one, right? The group stage is a best of one, and I think the Challenger is the one place where these great upsets could happen. So maybe you get that one map win, but this is a very tough group. I mean, we've already mentioned Falcons complexity. We've got ENCE, which granted it's a whole new roster and they probably don't know what the hell they're doing, but Glaive is pretty damn experienced. Then on the other side, you've got MiBR, who I think is the best Brazilian team at the moment. Aurora is coming in as well. This is a pretty stacked challenger for the most part. So it's going to kind of come down to their group. I presume maybe they can get a best of one out of the bag. I am kind of in agreement with you. I don't think that they're going to go much farther than the group stages, to be fair.
I think it's going to be brutal. I mean, if they wind up in the same... They shouldn't wind up in the same group as Alliance, right? Because presumably they're the 2 last seeds, so they should be in opposite groups. I just don't see too much of a path. ENCE is a bit of a question mark, right? With the 2 new players, with SDY and podi. I'm not as worried about SDY. He's kind of a plug-and-play, pretty great player, but maybe... podi crumbles in the first outing with the new team kind of thing. I don't know. There's theoretical worlds where you could sneak a series, but I think, any of those same question marks you'd levy against another team are going to be on Party Astronauts as well. These are, as much as I like these players, they've had a history of maybe sometimes inconsistency in big moments. You look at Wolfie, you look at Fang. These are 2 guys who you have to have performing for this team to look like they can. And so if even one of them is off, that could be a huge factor. There's the travel to consider. These guys don't get consistent travel opportunities, so it affects them more than it may some other teams. Just kind of one of the realities. It's the same thing you get with Asian teams and with Oceanic teams. You just kind of learn how to deal with it as a player. But if you don't have as much experience, it's tough. Infinite back in the fold is a solid piece, but he still feels like he could be a bit of a stopgap. I don't know. It's just this team also really felt like they were building with Rush, which is very exciting. Experienced player, major winner, and then he gets yoinked, right? And I think they were pretty frustrated about that. Fang brings a lot more of that experience as well, but he's not the same veteran player. He's an experienced player who's ascending still. He doesn't have that experience of been there, done that, won that Rush brought to the table. That is a calming factor on the other players. So I want to be optimistic. I want to be wrong. I want to be so wrong. If they make playoffs, I'll be staying up with the rave, I'll be partying at the DJ stand next door because I want to be so wrong about this. But I think it's just a factor of using this as an opportunity to get experience in Europe, using it as an opportunity to practice in Europe, trying to do the best damn job you can and show what you can do in the matches that you get.
So you'll be watching this, and we would have recorded it a week prior. So we won't have the results of Yalla, which is happening. We needed sleep, so that's why we're doing it this way. But we also won't have the group stages. So a lot of what we're saying might be all up in the air. But talking about Yalla, that's actually the first time you get to see this new ENCE lineup. You brought them up earlier on there. And I saw an interview with SDY leading into this where basically they've barely practiced. So as a lineup, I think he said they maybe had like 4 practice sessions. They're now at Yala. They're going to go straight from Yala, obviously, to Challenger. I expect very little from a team that has basically not played together at all. I don't care how experienced SDY is. I feel like this is going to be ENCE's using this as like practice just to try and get some time under the belt, right? We can't expect much more from them, surely.
I will say, this Yala Compass event is really funny because I think it's a bad format, frankly, but I think it's a great format for teams that are figuring themselves out. I don't like what I'm saying is I think it's a weird format for a show, right? For a broadcast where you're trying to find the best of competition and like distilling it. But I actually think because they're playing, I think like 5 BO1s in the groups, it's like a round robin, which we don't see a lot of in CS these days. It just means you're going to get a lot of maps, which is great for a team like this, where you've got an idea of how you want to play. You know that SDY is probably going to be able to figure it out relatively quickly. You've got podi, who maybe is a little bit more of a question mark on that. So presumably you're using this as a boot camp. You've got all the teams there, and you've got 5 officials to kind of actually test it in live fire environments and a variety of opponents. They already lost to NIP. Not exactly a great thing to do in the modern world of Counter-Strike, but, you know, the Mongols going to be a tough test. That gives you a preview into Jonkoping. You got Sashi. That should be a beatable opponent. Get some confidence. And then Astralis Heroic. Like, it's tough, but you're actually going to get live fire drills to kind of rapidly figure out how you want to deploy some of these players. So it could be like a little bit of a training montage. It could be something that accelerates the development of the team. I think that's one of those things where we won't really know how it's going till we're on the ground and talking to them. Because some teams, you know, click instantly and you get that honeymoon period and everything's great. And some teams are like, bro, we don't even call spots the same thing. Like, this is going to take some time.
They have a phenomenal IGL and a very experienced coach. So I feel like if they use this weekend to their advantage, they could probably put... I feel like Glaive could take some sticks and string and like make some sort of little stick man that could potentially run around a little bit during Challenger and maybe work. I believe he has the potential, but I have no hope. If I'm honest, I don't really see much happening from ENCE. I think more could come from the Mongols because every time they come to Challenger, they upset someone. I kind of see that happening, especially because now they don't have this like... Actually, maybe this might be their downfall because normally when they come into a Challenger, it's always like up until the last minute, we don't even know if they're pitching. Then they arrive and they do incredible things. This time, I'm presuming they're coming straight from Yala to Sweden. They won't have any travel problems. I don't know how they cope when they don't have like this ridiculous pressure to even get to the event on their shoulders anymore.
Yeah, I mean, in Atlanta, it was the most insane thing. They had 2 players who, because of a delay in one place, missed a flight. They wound up getting in the morning of their games. I talked to them. They had not slept like at all, you know, little bits of plain sleeping. They hadn't really even gone. I think they maybe got time for a shower, but they arrived at like 10 a.m. and the first game was at 1, and they made it. You know, that we literally had to change the group order just so that they would get there in time for their games. They like got to the venue, sat down, played immediately, and won against Complexity as well, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, this is kind of a ridiculous team, and I think the conversation about the Mongols is gonna shift because they've just come off this win. This is their hometown event win at the Misa Nomadic Masters. Admittedly, you know, a little bit of an advantage there. The other competition was definitely not as stiff. They played Bleed in the final, for example. I think the other toughest team was probably Aurora. This is a more friendly event for them, for sure. But I still think this is a situation where they're building confidence. They're such a young team that every event is extra experience in the brains of players like Senzu, like Mzinho. And so, again, not dealing with dramatic time zone shifts, not dealing with the most insane schedule. Not saying, you know, Dubai to Jonkoping isn't rad, but it's not Mongolia. It's not Ulaanbaatar to Jonkoping. So I think they could really do some damage. I think the Mongols are my sneaky pick to win the damn thing. I don't even know if it's that sneaky.
Wow, straight up. I do think that because the narrative around the Mongols has always been, oh, they don't have enough time to play, right? They don't get enough play time. They don't really have enough opposition. They need to travel more. That, you know, they don't have the funds to travel. But now it's like they've done this like back to back to back thing where they're coming in challenges like their third tournament on the chart. You might actually be right, because this is what we've always said, is that Mongols would be brilliant if they just had more competition time. This could actually be it. Interesting. We'll keep your prediction there, and we'll just put a little pin in it because we'll call these at the end. But that's a big brain thinking. You don't think MiBR, though? I mean, they won Melbourne. I think that is like, I love this team. I think they're a little bit like hot and cold most days, but I feel like they could do pretty well in this lineup of teams.
I was mega bullish on MiBR coming into this season at the start of the year, and they just haven't quite. They had Melbourne. Melbourne was great. They haven't quite had the results, right? There's been some disappointing events. There's been some events where they're just kind of like not outright bad, but not good kind of thing, which is understandable considering the competition they're up against. But this is a team that I want to be so excited about because I think ENCE is possibly the best talent in Brazil right now. I think BRN is also a very talented rifler, Breno. I really liked Safe back in his Pain stint. I think it didn't go well in Furia, but I also think who has done well in Furia is an opera, right?
Furia, nothing goes well in Furia.
It's like launches with NIP. Your time on Furia doesn't count, Safe. So I think he can take over on this team as well. I think this is a well-built roster. I think this is a solid team. I think they will do well. I think they're an easy pick to make playoffs. I don't know if they have the juice to lift the trophy. I don't know if I'm stacking MiBR up against the Mongols, up against Falcons, up against Complexity, even up against Aurora. I think that's where they're going to struggle. I think, ENCE Party Astronauts Alliance, that should be fine. I'm curious to see. I think they can prove me wrong, but I don't know if I don't know if I'm an MiBR believer right this moment. I think that I want to be. I just don't know if I'm there.
It's so funny that you say that because exactly how you feel about MiBR is how I feel about Aurora. I just don't think. I think that they're fine. They do fine, but I think when the screws get tightened, they struggle a little bit. In my opinion, I don't know if they have the juice to lift it. I think that's why MiBR could beat them in Melbourne. From what I've seen, I think that they're great online, but I just don't know if they're able to cross the finish line. But you seem to think they could potentially go further than the Brazilians.
I think that my thing with Aurora is I 100% agree with what you're talking about. It's a very young team. It's a very inexperienced team, relatively, right? They don't have a lot of LAN experience. They don't have a lot of stage experience. They don't have a lot of crowd experience. And they are inconsistent. They have been inconsistent online. They are inconsistent on LAN. They want to play bully Counter-Strike. They want to run you down and shoot you in the head. But they don't always. I've seen this evolution online from them in this year because last year it was always just they're going to fight, they're going to fight, they're going to fight, they're going to fight, they're going to fight. Like there is no second gear. And this year it depends on the opponent. If they respect an opponent, they slow way the hell down. Maybe even too much sometimes of trying to do it right. And then if they don't respect the opponent, they try and just run them over. So it's that they need that middle gear of, hey, what are we best at? Running people over. What do we need to learn when to do? When to run people over and when to chill the hell out. So I think that for me, Aurora is one of these teams that I'm looking at to eventually have the breakthrough. I don't know if it's going to be this event, but they're always in my mind is that potential where, you've just got so much firepower on Result, Deco, really Norvi as well. Really all of them have just crazy headshotting ability. And so they're always my pick to be dangerous, especially at these events where you start out with a BO1, where you go into 1 BO3 potential elimination. It's just, if they're on a good day, if they're hot, this is a really damn difficult team to play.
I think my prediction would be that Aurora will get through the group stages. They'll win both their best of ones and immediately qualify for the semifinals. So they'll miss Saturday, and then in the semifinals, I think they'll lose.
I think that's very reasonable. I don't think they're going to lift the trophy, but I'm just saying, if you're looking at this event, and you're saying that, well, then that means one of Complexity, Falcons, Mongols, or MiBR isn't making it, right? That's just the math. This is why this is a brutal event.
I can have more predictions on that, but we'll talk about the last team before we do that, which I kind of like the story around this. It's all very feel-good and quite cute. I think they're going to struggle in this event, but Alliance, the full Swedish roster, they're going to be there at Dreamhack in front of the home crowd. You probably find mom and dad are coming to watch them. It's kind of a fun story, and there's a South African tie there because Bonemaster was on, and an American tie in a way because ATK played in America.
ATK?
Bonemaster was... Yeah, he played for ATK. ATK is actually a South African organization. So we've both got a little bit of a tie there. I think it's fun. I don't think that they'll feature much, though, in the tournament. It's my opinion.
I think the thing is, look, hometown crowd buff would be sick. Obviously, the Swedish crowd is going to love this because, damn, do the Swedes need somebody to root for. It's been a weirdly hopeful season for Swedish Counter-Strike. NIP's back to being Swedish. Medisport surprised, but then they made changes. Like, there's some reason for optimism in the Swedish scene for the first time in 4 years, I think. So that's dope. That's great. But also, Alliance isn't the best Swedish team. They're not the second best Swedish team. I'm not sure they're the third best Swedish team, but they've certainly got a contention for that. It was a surprise that they qualified through here. It was a surprise that they made this event. They really have not had any good wins to speak of in recent memory. They're not a team that has done well against this tier of competition even. They're a team that's not doing well against the online tier of competition below this one. So the heart wants this to work out for the Swedish crowd. It would be sick if they could do anything and make a run or even just win one game. But the brain says they're ranked 87th in the world for a reason.
That's it. I mean, there's not much more to say to that, right? Now that all of Sweden dislikes you, good luck when you pitch up on stage there. Let's make our final predictions here. So I've already said I think Aurora will make the semis. I think Falcons will actually win the whole damn thing. And that is the most illogical decision to make, but I have to say it because, God, I need this team to do something. I just want them to do something. This has to be the thing that's something that they do. Otherwise, what the hell? What the hell is this? They're too experienced. Yeah. They have business class flights to and from these events. They have all the tools at their disposal. They have the most experienced players. They got major winners on that lineup. How can they not win this? How, when you look at who they're up against? That's where I'm at.
I think it's a good take. I think it's a good prediction.
It's the wrong take. We all know when we have this conversation after the event, I'm going to have to explain myself. But that's where I sit. Oh, and I think that Complexity will get knocked out. I don't think that they'll make the playoffs. You
think they're one of the four that gets knocked out in groups?
I don't think Complexity doesn't cope with Challenger. It's just not their vibe.
They don't do well with it. No, you're right.
I should probably write this down so I remember. Yeah, I think I should probably write this down so I remember what I've said. But those are that's my call. Falcons to win it, Aurora to make semis, Complexity to not make playoffs. Do you have any ridiculous takes?
I think I'm being really boring and picking the top 4 seeds to make it through the playoffs. I think Aurora could push it.
So safe, Mike. So safe.
I know, but if you're looking at this, I just don't think I have it for ENCE yet. I would love to be wrong about PA, but I don't believe. Alliance, I don't believe. And for Aurora, it's yes, Aurora is my pick that could ruin it, right? Because if Aurora comes in hot and they just have a good day one, they could be through and no one else can touch them. That's just the reality of these Challenger events. You just need one good day, and if it's the first day, and you happen to be in the group that plays, all their matches. I mean, both groups play their BO1s that day. You could just be through, no problem, no issue, all good. That's the Aurora story. But I think if I'm matching them up against each of the top 4 teams, I'm at most picking Aurora 2 out of 5 times in those matchups. You know what I mean? If we're talking about maps. And that's probably against MiBR. And even then, I think Complexity is really hungry to actually do something and show that they can do something. And I think if they get knocked out in another groups at a Challenger event, that is just not befitting of their form. I think when Complexity is playing well, they are the best team in this event, bar none. Our questions about Complexity aren't the team, it's the mentality, as it always seems to be with this roster. So I think Complexity is making it through. Falcons, again, are in that similar boat where it's been a disappointing season and they're uber hungry to do something and show that this team justifies its existence. And then, man, I have this feeling the Mongols are going to lift this trophy. I just have this feeling. The vibes are Mongols. The vibes are Mongols. I can't pick against Blitz. I feel like they're going to stun. And I will also say the Mongols are Complexity's kryptonite. Complexity has never played this team very well. This team gives them so many problems, and so I think that, I think the Mongols are my pick to win this. I'm feeling the Mongols
to win. I like it. And I mean, the other question has to be who makes roster changes during the player break if this doesn't play out? Because I feel like Falcons and Complexity I mean, I don't know what, like Falcons, I feel like at this point you could put anyone in that lineup and it still doesn't seem like it's going to work. But complexity would be an interesting one. If they don't do well in this challenger, at what point do they have to say, okay, we have to change something now?
I think that complexity have committed themselves to keeping this roster through the player break. I don't know if I agree with it, but I think they've done it. And I think at this point, the understanding is also like who would you get, right? What North American player is going to be available that you get, or what European are you going to tempt over? Who's going to mesh with the team? Who's going to work with the team? Yeah, I think that one's a tough one to answer, right? Because you also have to be careful with complexity. If you're replacing somebody with a European, it kind of has to be Hallzerk because you don't want to give up your status as an American team. I don't know if JT qualifies at this point. He should, but I don't know if he does. So it's one of those things of like, I just don't know that there's a clear path to changes for complexity, and I think that Pro League justified enough to them that they're like, we're gonna keep trying to make this work. I think that as much as I love TC, he's probably the guy where if they really bomb out here, like at some point you have to look at the command structure, and that means it's either TC or JT. And I really like the way those two guys work together. I really like what they do. But if you're looking for changes where you don't want to alter the roster, that's kind of where it happens.
It's hard for me. I've grown up with TC, right? He's been a friend of mine since I was like a very young. So to say it is harsh, but I do think that like if they bomb out again, like they're gonna have to look at their coaching setup and be like, okay, if we can't change players, what can we change? Because something has to give. I hate saying that. That's just broken my heart and put me in a terrible mood. But there you go. It had to be said. Mike said it. I repeated it. Done.
Yeah, we will specify here. I think Tian is a good coach. I think TC is a good coach. I think that he is also one of the most pleasant people to see at events. Just a shining ray of positivity. But it's just like something's got to give. If they're getting grouped here, if they're getting knocked out without a win, like something's got to give. I think Falcons is the biggest one, where if they get grouped here, if they have a total bomber performance at this Challenger event, they're either going to say, randomness of Challenger event, or they have to make changes because this team has high expectations and they have not delivered on them. Those are the two that I think the big pressure's on.
100%. I just don't know, other than getting Nico, what Falcons thinks they can do. But that is a conversation for a whole other event and a whole other podcast. This is a stack challenger. That's what we know. You're going to be on the ground. We will meet up again afterwards and discuss and share our war stories. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about these games. I think it's going to be tons of fun.
Yeah, it should be a really good time. You're going to be able to stock up on Marabou as well. Always important here. We're going to have a good time. I'm excited. I'm going to go jump in a lake. Apparently that's what you do in Jönköping, so bring in my swim trunks. I'm ready to jump on in to the lake and also to this event.
Get it on film. And now, obviously, you can let us know if you think our predictions are dog shit in the comments. And maybe we'll reply, maybe we won't. And we'll be back straight after the event to see how wrong we really were. We'll see you then.